The situation at the AFL is the head of football now, Mark Evans, has been in the chair for around 8 weeks. He took over a decade of change by Adrian Anderson, the former head of football operations. During the week, Damien Barrett sat down for his first exclusive interview, Mark Evans, on his vision for the role, and he started with asking him about the current plight of umpiring.
I think there were some confusing statements and plenty of talkback radio where people were saying one thing or another, and you also need to build into there that there were some umpiring errors. There was no change in the instruction to umpires. There was no increase in free kicks in pushing in the marking contest, but we had this public debate that was ranging about what had changed. When we sift it down, and we still want to encourage a show of strength in a marking contest. We still want people to be able to protect where the ball's going to drop. But what we want to avoid is this absolute primary focus of just removing your man away from the contest.
Confusing statements. You made that statement yourself just then. I'm referring to, I'd imagine, Jeff Geeshan's commentary around that particular issue at the time. Did that cloud it unnecessarily, the murkiness around it?
Yeah, it did a little bit, but it was also where that was then taken, particularly talkback radio and people calling in, making, some of them were quite informed statements and some of them weren't, and some of them would say, referring to an umpiring error as opposed to a change in what we were hoping for in umpiring in the first place.
Jeff's going on long service leave pretty soon, is that right?
Yeah, he is, yes.
Yeah. Is that unusual the umpire's boss would take off during the season?
Yeah, as happens when you have long-standing employees, they store up a fair bit of leave, and the company has asked for that to be reduced, so Jeff will take a portion of that this year.
Is he safe in his job, Mark, just given the scrutiny around him in recent times?
Jeff does a terrific job. He is so passionate about umpires and umpiring, and he's committed to improving the system for umpires and umpiring. So I think that's the primary thing that you judge someone on.
I'm hearing that penalties for interchange infringements is being looked at and maybe reduced by way of severity. Is that right?
Again, this has come out of consultations with clubs, and it is one of the most frustrating things for clubs, and I think for supporters, when there is an interchange infringement, invariably results in a stop in play. When you focus as a supporter, your focus is somewhere else. You may not even recognise that there's been an infringement, and suddenly the ball is stops, is a free kick, and then transferred 50 metres downfield. Sometimes it feels like the penalty for that can outweigh the importance of the infringement in the first place. So I'm happy to have a look at that.
You've come from a footy club background. If you were still there, would you be saying to your players, do not bump under any circumstances?
I think there are some difficulties in the game now where the players' sole intention, they solely elect to bump. They have to understand that there are a lot of ways that that bump can go wrong, and they need to be particularly careful in that bumping situation. One, to not give away a free kick. Two, because of the duty of care to the player, that if that bump goes wrong, the chance for serious injury. So that message has been well understood for a number of years, that it is becoming more onerous on that person when they absolutely elect to bump.
The Lindsay Thomas incident in round one, I know you weren't officially part of the competition at that stage. Do you think that has caused a fair bit of confusion with what's happened since?
I think it has, yeah, because we've conditioned the world to believe that when you elect to bump and you cause forceful head contact, that you will be guilty of rough conduct. There are two out clauses to that. One of them is if you didn't have any alternate way of contesting the ball. In Lindsay's case, he could have done other things, so he wasn't let off on that. But the second is that something has happened that was outside of the control of the player. And one of the exceptions that is listed on the DVD for the match review panel and the tribunal and clubs to determine says if there is a head clash, then that will be deemed as accidental and not chargeable. Now, whether that is correct or not correct is absolutely up for debate. And the football world at clubs are 50-50 split on this. But I do think that if we are taking a stronger stance on the management of concussion and assessment of concussion, then we probably also need to review all of those things that can try and prevent concussion in the first place.
Yeah. It confuses so many people, Mark. Will you seek to review the match review panel at the end of the year?
Yeah, it gets reviewed every year anyway, and I have a level of sympathy for a result where something goes just beyond a free kick. So we decide it's just beyond a free kick, and to me that should invariably result in a reprimand towards 1 week. And sometimes when you decide something has crossed the line and becomes reportable, and it spits out something higher than that, you can feel the club and player frustration when that occurs.
And the review, I mean, could it potentially remove the criteria as we know it and the grading systems around the criteria, or is it more of a tinkering with what we've got?
Yeah, I haven't looked into that with any great detail. It does get confusing though when we're adding up base points and we're adding or subtracting points for record, and then we're adding carryover points, and then we're reducing points for an early plea, and it gets confusing at the back end of it all to say, why is this 2 weeks and that one was 1 week and that one was off and that one was 3? So that does become more difficult to explain to people unless they're prepared to invest their time into understanding the points allocated.